Present.
Mr. Booker,
Here.
Mr. Brubaker is absent. Mr. Esposito is absent. Mr. Shaw,
Present.
Mr. Hensley,
Here.
Dave Turflair is here. Okay. We won't have any emergency additions or deletions tonight since this is a preliminary determination hearing regarding the building project. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our superintendent, Kyle Whelan.
Before we begin the hearing, I would like to have a moment of silence. Yesterday, we were informed that one of our MCS family members, Miss Erin Working, had passed away. She's a 2015 graduate of Manchester Junior Senior High School and returned to us as a paraprofessional working in our level literacy intervention program. And so this is a tragic loss, but we certainly value all the time that we had with her. So at this time, I'd like to observe a moment of silence. Thank you, and yeah, I know that the family does appreciate everybody's thoughts and prayers throughout this process. So we'll go ahead and get started with our preliminary determination hearing. Are you good for me to go ahead and stand up and start this? Yep. Oh, this is already on. Okay, so as a part of the process for our proposed building projects, we do need to have a preliminary determination hearing. We have had a couple community night information meetings to help the community become more informed about this project and how it came to be. We want to stay in line with our mission and vision and with our strategic planning group. That Manchester Community Schools provides diverse opportunities for all students in a safe and creative learning environment. And so we put that as the forefront when we started our strategic planning. This is kind of a timeline. This whole process started back in July of 2019. And, throughout that process, they determined that there were some things that we would really like to do to be able to enhance this profile of our graduate that we weren't able to do in our current space. And so we did come up with a proposed building project that we've been working toward. Some of those priorities are securing entrances at MES and MJSHS, as well as a secure passageway from this building, Manchester Administrative Offices, to Manchester Junior Senior High School. And a big part of that is we do have our 7th graders here in the MAO building, and they do pass back and forth for lunch, as well as band and choir, as well as extracurriculars. And so there's a lot of traffic going back and forth between the buildings, and we wanted to secure that. Part of securing those entrances, we'll just brief over this area. This is the entryway to the junior senior high school. That is this is the main entrance to Manchester Elementary School. And so this is the first door where you enter. And currently, once people walk in, they can turn left or right, walk around the building. It's not very clear as to where the office is that they should check in. So part of this project is to repurpose the first 2 classrooms. So this isn't new construction. This is repurposing existing space. And we wanted to create an office area in there. We will have a secure entryway where anyone who is entering and exiting the building would need to pass through. That includes a Raptor system to do background checks. The principal's office would be in there, conference room, records room, as well as a nurse's station. At the junior senior high school, so once again, this right here is the main entrance, door 1. And those of you familiar with this building, as soon as you enter door 1, you're walking straight ahead, and there's a hallway to the left and also to the right. And so there's no way to really control who's coming and going from our building. So once again, there is a classroom as soon as you enter the building, and we'd be looking to repurpose that space into a secure entryway where we can screen any visitors that we have, as well as an office area space there, so visitors wouldn't just be able to come in and freely access our building. So both of those buildings would be secured by repurposing space. Another priority is our cafeteria. So the cafeteria we currently have was built for grades 9 through 12, and traditionally was built when we just served lunch. And now we are serving lunch and breakfast and utilizing it for grades 7 through 12. So we want to increase the prep area as well as the service area, increase the amount of seating, because currently we do have students sitting out in the hallway during lunchtime, and then also make it more of a multifunctional space, because there's a lot of times where we have larger groups gathering and we don't have a really good space for those groups, and so we want to create a more multifunctional area. This is a very preliminary drawing of what this might look like. Once we have more time with Garmin Miller, we'll lay this out a little bit better. But over here to your far right is the junior senior high school. And then over here to your left is Manchester Administrative Offices. And the proposal has the corridor connecting at the end of the hall where the students currently exit down by the agricultural room and the technology area, and then enter the building at where the gym entrance is, although right now I think it's listed as Squire Academy as well. And so we'd have a corridor that students could securely pass from one building to the other, and then this larger yellow area somewhere along this corridor would be our cafeteria, kitchen area, and what this will allow for with this service drive back behind for deliveries as well. Besides the safety piece and the cafeteria, we also wanted to look at our academic opportunities. At Manchester Elementary School, we're K-12, we're STEM certified, and so we wanted to create a STEM room to enhance those opportunities for our students. We also needed to expand the conference room. The current elementary conference room is rather small, so there's not a real good way to collaborate with people in that space. And then at the junior senior high school, we're looking to create a student collaboration room to help develop some of those soft skills and that collaborative nature. Most of our rooms are that traditional classroom right now with 5 rows of 5 desks. And so we wanted to create a space that teachers were able to reserve when they wanted something more tailored to collaboration. Also, we wanted to build a business innovation center that's going to include our coffee shop, The Bean, as well as the apparel store for the items that our students create, design, manufacture, market, and then sell. And so we wanted a space for all of that as well. What that looks like at MES. So once again, this is the main entryway, and we're going to repurpose those first 2 classrooms into the office area, which then that frees up that whole office area here for our STEM room. And one of the coolest aspects of this is that whole front of that space that's facing the main hallway is all glass of the current office, but that would stay that way for the STEM classroom. So students would be able to pass by and see what other students are doing during STEM, which would certainly pique that interest. Additionally, at the junior senior high school, once again, just for reference, this is door 1 in the new office area down here. This is the gymnasium space. And so our current cafeteria and kitchen area is located on this corner. And this is the area that we would be repurposing for our Business Innovation Center. So there's area here for an apparel or spirit shop. There's area for the bean slash concession stand. There's area for the Business Innovation classroom. And then also that collaborative classroom that we're looking to provide as well. And so this is a very large area when you take the current cafeteria, the current service area, and the current kitchen all into account. There's a lot of space there that we can repurpose for academic use. The funding and the financials. So we are working with several partners, Oscar Gutierrez, Dennis Otten, and Landon Bain. And so I will turn it over to Oscar at this time to address the financial questions.
I'm going to hand out a document that brought extras. If there was anybody here in the public, they would also be able to receive a copy of this.
The information I passed out to board members would have been available to anybody from the audience if they wanted to receive a copy. This is information that I have to legally disclose, and as I go through these numbers, I want to make sure I highlight that these are max parameters, meaning that this is the highest we can go, and we can always go down, but we can't go up from here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and read line by line, and it's not the most exciting thing to do here, but it is the best way to ensure that we cover everything that is supposed to be disclosed in this issuance. The first thing I'll read is, and I'm literally going to read you everything that's on this document, so my apologies ahead of time. The result of the school corporation current projected annual debt service payments divided by the net asset value of the taxable property within the corporation, we are expecting that to the annual debt service is going to vary between year and year, as we demonstrated in previous meetings. We are projecting that the highest that payment will be is roughly $1,069,430,000, and that will only be through a short period of 4 years. Then it levels off to a much lower amount again, and the strategy behind that was to allow this body to issue future debt in 4 years. If you turn to the single Excel attachment that I handed out to you, you can see how that payment was calculated. And actually I gave you the wrong number here. I am so sorry. I looked at the wrong column. The maximum annual debt service was $1,140,880,000, and that is when you add up the two payments, because those are semi-annual payments. When you look at the first mortgage bonds of 2022. The next item is the result of sum of the school corporation's outstanding long-term debt plus the outstanding long-term debt of other taxing units that include any of the territory of the school corporation divided by the net asset value of the school corporation. Without reading one by one, the direct debt is the debt that you currently have. That should also be mapped out on the Excel sheet that you have. The amounts and the maturities are highlighted both on this page 1 and on the attachment. The overlapping debt is debt that taxpayers will also be responsible for, but you have no control over, and that would be the debt that is held by the town of North Manchester and Pleasant Township, both highlighted on here as well. The calculations were made on a population of 30,976,000 based on the 2020 census, and your current net assessed valuation is 420,842,112, with a total net direct debt, the debt that you guys currently have outstanding, of 18,137,200, and direct and overlapping debt totaling 19,875,625. When you take that per capita, based on the 2020 census numbers, that comes out to $586 per person, and the overall debt at $642 per person. This is being structured as a lease debt. We're planning on issuing for a total of 20 years, but we listed a maximum of 22, with the understanding that we plan on doing 20 years. The maximum principal amount of the bonds and maximum lease rental lease of the bonds, it is a principal of $11,500,000. Again, that is the maximum that we can issue towards the projects, $11.5 million. We can always go down. I know that you guys are working hard with your architects to ensure that number is lower. If that number is lower, we'll adjust the numbers at a future date, but we cannot adjust them up if they end up being higher. The maximum annual debt service for this payment would be $1,140,880,000. The estimated interest rate that we would pay at an estimated total interest cost is not to exceed 6%. Keep in mind that we put a maximum parameter here. This is not what we expect to be. We expect this to be within the range that we've been saying. We have to put a worst case scenario, catastrophic scenario, so that we didn't have to start over should something happen. So again, that is a not to exceed number. I am so sorry that we have to do this. The purpose of this lease is to enable the financing of a school improvement project consisting of the planning, design, and construction of a new enclosed hallway connector between the administration and junior high building and the high school building, a new cafeteria, and renovations at the high school building, including the repurposing of classroom spaces for a secure building entry and admittance of offices. Oh man, I can't read. And repurposing the existing cafeteria as a business classroom, school store, and snack coffee bar, as well as the purchase of equipment including buses, and a new entrance and renovations to the elementary school building, including repurposing existing classroom space for the security entry and office space, repurposing old building space as a family restroom and sensory room for STEM, and the removal and replacement of the cafeteria floor with a new covering, and all related improvements in connection with, through, and above. Any owners of the property within the school corporation or registered voters residing within the school corporation who want to request the application of the local public question access under Indiana Code 6-1, 1-20-3.6 for imposing property taxes to pay lease rentals on the proposed lease must file a petition that complies with Indiana Code 6-1.1-20-3.5 lowercase b _4 and 5 no later than 30 days after publication by the school corporation of the notice of preliminary determination to enter into the lease in accordance with Indiana Code as stated before in Indiana Code 5.3-1. Again, this was covered at the last two meetings in great detail about what it would take to take this to referendum. A lot of these will be redundant, and we just have to go through them. Let's get through them. The school corporation current debt service levy and rate. The debt service certified levy of $2,168.77, and the debt service certified rate of 0.53 cents and 40 0.5344 cents, and the total unit rate of $1.05 and 55. I want to take a pause there because I'm getting very dry, and continue to remind you and anybody watching this as I jargon all these numbers that there's a meaning behind it, and that meaning is around that 53-cent number. That is what ultimately translates to what taxpayers will pay based on their assessed valuation. And our projection is that we will keep that 53-cent number flat for the coming years, which means that there will be no tax increase onto the taxpayers. So while I'm babbling all these numbers, the one key takeaway that I want not only you but the public, if anybody's watching, is that that 53 cents or 53.44 cents will remain flat. The estimated increase to the school corporation debt service levy and rate will result to the lease. Again, we already covered that. Our goal is to keep that rate flat. The estimated amount of the school corporation debt service and rate will result during the following 10 years. School corporation, if the school corporation enters into the lease in consideration of the changes in such due date, the maturing or termination of existing debt obligations. The schedule has been provided to you. They vary in years. Obviously, we've gone over at least 3 times in these videos that there's debt falling off, and as debt falls off, some of the remaining bonds are increasing in nature, so that the debt service doesn't exactly level off because of the way that the 2016 bonds are backloaded. And I believe that that is all that I am required to disclose, and I am happy to now speak to you in English and go over the other sheet, if I may. And yes, sir.
Okay, that 53 cents, that's per $100 of evaluation of your assessed valuation, and that's not changing. We're not raising taxes, correct?
That's correct. That is the current rate for 2021, and these projections will not increase that rate for 2022.
Okay, what is the $1.05 unit total rate? Is that all school tax, or is that the town tax and the Pleasant Township tax and our tax together?
Let me look that up for you. Give me 30 seconds, if I may.
Sure.
What I'm doing right now, I'm pulling the DLGF budget order for Wabash County, which will include school and it is the school's rate. That is the overall school rate that includes everything that you guys levy, but for debt purposes, the debt is not changing the rate. So there might be changes based on other items that buses and transportation, but the rate that debt controls is not changing.
Thank you.
Again, I'm going to cover this one last time in case anybody in the public had not seen any previous videos. What we did when we were engaged by the board was try to accomplish 3 things. One is ensure that we can finance the projects that were highlighted earlier and that the superintendent covered. The second task was not to increase taxes, and we accomplished that by maintaining that tax rate flat that we covered a couple of times. And then the last item was to allow this body to give themselves enough room to issue debt in 4 to 5 years in the unlikely scenario that this board may not be here, maybe a different board. So they have the flexibility to issue whatever they feel is a priority to them. So what we did is we highlighted every single thing that the school corporation currently has for debt. So each one of the columns that are presented up here represents your current debt service. and then you have the years in which they're mature. So the first two common school loans, as you can tell, are falling off almost immediately, followed by the 2019 general obligation bonds, and then the 2020 bonds that were issued last year. While all of this is great news that there's debt falling off and that you could potentially issue new debt because of that, that was sidelined a little bit, because if you pay attention to your 2012, and 2016 bonds, you can see how they gradually increase as the years progress. So if you look at 2012, well, there is debt that falls off for 2019 and 20, and then the common school loans, the payment goes from 200 to 300 to 330 to 435. You have a similar scenario in the 2013s, only by where you go from 151,000 to 221, and the most dramatic one is around the 2016 bonds, where you have almost a de minimis in relation to the overall payment of $34,000, then it jumps up to 149, and then it levels off at the very end to this $697,000 semi-annual payments. So the 2016 bonds sort of handcuffed us a little bit on what we could do. So what we had to do in our proposed debt here is we had to structure where we capitalize enough interest to not begin payments until 2023. And if you look all the way to the furthest right column where it has the tax rates, you'll notice that as we get to 2025 and then 2026, that rate starts to drop, which will allow for the potential issuance of future debt. In addition to that, we flatlined what we believe that the total assessed valuation for the district is, and you guys had a fairly steady increase over the years, so we fully expect for the community to continue to grow and values to go up, but we are not projecting for that. And if that does happen, that will allow for the future issuance to be slightly higher. Now, if they jump up significantly next year, we may have to do a small short-term issuance, maybe for a year, just to capture that growth. But with that, I'll stop here. I know we've covered this at least 3 or 4 times, and want to allow for any additional questions that anybody may have before I allow Dennis to come up and discuss anything further. Hearing none, thank you all. I appreciate the patience. Those are items that have to be disclosed because of the type of issues that we're doing as a lease. So by code, we have to ensure that we cover each one of those. Some advisors like to just do a graph and kind of go through it. I'd rather read exactly what is required per code and ensure that I answer each question just to check that box. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Oscar.
Good evening, board members. Thanks, Oscar, for that. Actually, I'm glad that you went through that as well, because I'm just going to briefly touch upon some of the legal steps where we're at, where we're going in terms of the process to issue the bonds. This is the first of 2 preliminary determination hearings that are required by statute. The second one will be held on December 14th, which will also coincide with the 1028/project hearing that will be held. Following those hearings on December 14th, the board will be presented with what we call a preliminary determination resolution. And much of what Oscar just went through will be contained in that resolution, and we're working with Oscar and the folks at Baird to put that resolution right now. And that resolution, as Oscar noted, will set the parameters for the financing. And now again, ultimately this financing will not raise taxes, and will set the school corporation up for future years to have flexibility for financing. Once that resolution is adopted on December 14th, it will start another process where a legal notice will be advertised, which will trigger a 30-day period in which interested voters or taxpayers or both can circulate a petition requesting this project be placed on a local referendum. We're not anticipating that to be the case, but it's in our timetable. Once that 30-day process ends, assuming that no such petition's been filed, we'll then move to processes with the board and the building corporation to approve the forms of financing documents, which we expect to occur in February, and then ultimately be in a position to be out on the bond marketplace in early March to sell the bonds, which is where Landon Bain and the Robert W. Baird team really come in. Also during February, the school corporation will be going through a rating process with Standard & Poor's to get its rating. Once the bonds are priced, we take roughly 2 to 3 weeks working with Mark to finalize the legal documents with the building corporation and the school corporation and the bonds and get the bonds issued. And I always like to say on these, and I know we've said it in the informational meetings, that when the bonds are issued, the proceeds don't come directly to the school corporation. They go to a corporate bond trustee, typically a Bank of New York, Huntington Bank, US Bank, Regions Bank. There's a number of them in Indianapolis. That bond trustee holds those bond proceeds exclusively for cost of the project. And so the school corporation will submit requisitions from architects, engineers, other vendors for payment of those costs, but they'll all be vetted to make sure that they're properly chargeable to the bond issue. That's kind of it where we're at in the legal process. Are there any questions I can answer for the board members?
Not really a question, but since we're live streaming tonight, could one of you two gentlemen talk just a little more in depth about the Standards and Poor's, working with our superintendent and our business manager to improve our credit rating going forward? I mean, just kind of a brief overview.
Oscar, you want to touch on that?
So we mentioned before that humans, they have 3 credit rating agencies. You have Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And when you decide to go buy a vehicle or a house, you always try to have the best credit rating to receive the best interest rate. So school corporations are no different. There are 3 rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's. And we will be going to Standard & Poor's for a rating. The idea behind what we're trying to accomplish is that you have no control over a lot of the factors that Standard & Poor's rates you on. They rate you on the state, which is a factor. They rate you on the economy, which the school corporation doesn't have a direct impact. But one of the things that you do have impact on moving forward is on the management. And the management is based around how you handle your finances as a board. And that is all primarily driven by written policies. It is okay for a school corporation to say that they're not going to spend X amount of money and have X amount of days cash at hand, but unless you have a written policy, Standard & Poor's will not give you credit for that hard work that you're already doing. So what we plan to do over the coming weeks, now that you have a business manager, hopefully she's fully ready to go, and I know you've had a lot to deal with, so we've tried to leave you alone, but we sent the superintendent a number of sample policies, and we can do one of 2 things. We can help draft something alongside with you, or we'll let you and Corporation Counsel draft something along those lines that works for the school. There'll be some determinations that have to be made, such as days cash at hand, how much debt you take, just certain policies that you can solidify as a board. And that is the one thing that you do have control over. There will be additional things because they look back at some of the things that have happened in the past, such as did you have a surplus, did you have a deficit? Those types of things, they're in the past and we can't control, but we can have a plan forward if there's anything that we highlight that needs improvement. But hopefully that answered the question, sir.
Thank you. Superintendent? Tanya? Board members? We don't have any patrons, so I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Hensley?
I'll second.
Mr. Booker, all in favor?